What is up? Glad to have you here. It is 3 and Out on the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. BJ Bennett alongside Ben Troop. Hope you're doing well. We have a lot to get to today as we'll preview the SEC championship game a couple of days out now from Georgia and Alabama. And I have an interesting thought, Ben, on this game. I think you might agree with me. Entering Saturday, is Alabama actually underrated a little bit? We'll get into that in terms of this matchup, but we'll talk some SEC football. Obviously, the coaching carousel. Greg Gilmore, former nose tackle for the LSU Tigers, he will join us. We'll talk about Brian Kelly to LSU. We will also chat with Dave Holcomb, southernpigskin.com, and get his thoughts. He has a preview up on the ACC championship game. Might be a high-scoring game between Pittsburgh and Wake Forest. We'll chat with Dave about that. And Ben, this week's Troop Talk, you sit down with former Florida Gator defensive tackle Adam Schuler. So we're looking forward to that as well. A lot of college football talk coming your way. Tweet at us at Pigskin Radio. But breaking news today, Christian Gokel and the guys covered it on Second Down. Sean Quinn, head football coach at Savannah State, has stepped down, has resigned. More on that. What that could potentially mean in a moment for Coach Quinn. But you're talking about a guy, Ben, that did a great job at Savannah State, was hired in February of 18 as the defensive coordinator. Then later that year became the interim head coach in his first head coach full season, went 7-3, 5-0 in conference play in the SEAC. And then you had the COVID 2020 season, but a 1-1 record in the spring. And then this past year, first 8-win season for Savannah State since 1994, 8-2, 5-1 in the SEAC. Great success for Sean Quinn. I know we really enjoyed our time around him, getting to chat with him, getting to visit with him, getting to know him a little bit. Christian Gokel, of course, did a great job with the Sean Quinn Show. I know, Ben, on a number of different occasions, you went up and spoke to Savannah State and I spent some time with Coach Quinn. And obviously we wish him the best moving forward, but just great success and made a major impact and had just a lot of success on the field, off the field, was a real winner at Savannah State.
Sean Quinn was one of them ones. And these are football terms that I'm saying, football phrases. It's seldom that you come across a coach that's about as transparent, as open as Sean Quinn is, BJ. And he really, really loved those young men. And that's not something that you're going to hear me say a lot of times. Sean Quinn gave his all to a program that was going through transition when he got there, going from D1 to D2. BJ really going through a lot of unforeseen challenges that he couldn't foresee, when he took the job, but didn't run from a challenge. They went an entire year in 2020 without football, and those young men believed in his vision. They stood the test of time. They had to watch the game they'd grown up loving and watching everybody else have a season. They didn't have a season. They overcame a lot of adversity when they was there. They had a young man there that had cancer, that had 2 questions when he got diagnosed. 1, am I going to beat cancer? And 2, Coach Quinn, do I still have a scholarship? So when you talk about a guy that made an impact, Sean Quinn, Savannah State is much better because of Sean Quinn. He will definitely be missed. That's not something that you're going to hear me say a lot, but Sean Quinn was a good man as well as a great coach. He got it done on the field too. Make no mistake about it. Most of the time when you talk about BJ, talking about a person's accolades, you're talking about what they meant to the team, what they meant to the community, what they meant to the university. Oh, make no mistake about it. That conference they was in, ask anybody that played them boys. It was big time football. But I always know this. A guy like Sean Quinn, I said this, BJ, I know that Sean Quinn had a 10-year plan. He never said that he was going to be there to see that 10-year plan come to the forefront. But Sean Quinn is a hell of a coach. He can coach. He's great with people. He got a chance to know the Golden Owls a little bit, BJ. I mean, we calling him up and down, in Southeast Georgia. But I'm gonna miss him because of the man he was, because of the coach he was, and what he meant to his team, his coaching staff, and in that community. But yeah, man, I mean, I wish him nothing but the best. He did it the right way. He didn't listen. BJ, didn't we have him on one time and he was painting the locker room? He was painting the locker room one time. He stopped painting for a second. So Sean Quinn is one of them ones. He believes in what he says. He goes out and rolls his sleeves up. He didn't make excuses. And I believe that Savannah State is in a much better place than BJ. Whoever has to come behind him, you got some big shoes to fill, because we talking as if this man didn't get it done on the field. No, they did get it done on the field from the opening go. And BJ, in 2020, they last game, didn't they score like a basketball number or something like that against the team they played against? With Sean Quinn, that's a great man, a great leader of young men. And BJ, he is that coach. You say when you are a coach in college, it's not about the wins and the losses. You are there to lead young men. That's what he did. And though if you are currently at Savannah State, yes, it's okay to feel bad that you're losing a great mentor, a great father figure, a great coach in Sean Quinn. But I guarantee you are a better person, a better young man. Because of him, he will be missed around Savannah, Georgia, man. But whoever gets Sean Quinn, whatever he does decide to, whatever staff he does decide to be on, or if he leaves the staff, who knows? They are getting a great coach with an even greater man, and yes, he's definitely going to be missed.
Yeah, and I believe Coach Quinn made a post on Twitter where there was a line in there that said, "It's not goodbye, it's I'll see you down the road." And Sean Quinn's one of those guys. I think you see him in 5 years, 10 years. I mean, he's going to remember you. He's going to talk about the special things that you did if you played for him. So there are reports, and again, these are reports. Footballscoop.com reporting that Sean Quinn is headed to Virginia Tech with their new head coach Brent Pry, who was at Georgia Southern in 2010. So that's a report from Football Scoop. But I think today thinking about all that Sean Quinn did at Savannah State, appreciating his impact. And Cam, I know we have some audio from earlier today, Sean Quinn speaking with the media.
All joking aside, this was the worst football program in America at any level. I can say that unequivocally when we got here. And, last night there was an interesting thing that happened. As a football coach, my daughter had a birthday a month and a half ago, and I still hadn't got her a present. And I got done recruiting up just past Cooler, so I stopped in Tanger Outlets, and I walk in the Nike outlet. And in the front door, I open the door, and there's a Savannah State section. And I'll be honest with you, I started bawling because I'm like, this would have never happened a couple years ago. And so that to me is success, to be honest with you. And, seeing the things people having pride and people stopping in town and people giving a rip, that's pretty cool.
See the emotion there, Ben, and obviously Coach cares a lot about Savannah State, about the program, about the people. I think highlighted, a lot of the great opportunities that are at Savannah State and some of the potential that, this program has shown the last couple of years. Again, right up there is a national name at the Division II level, but emotion from Coach Quinn there, and you can tell that this is a place and a program that means a lot to him.
Yeah, BJ, and the one thing I want to definitely speak on behalf of Coach Quinn is the same thing I would say as being a former athlete. They're people too now. Like, we get caught up in these coaches as if to say they don't have families. They don't have feelings and emotions. And you could tell when Sean Quinn said this was the worst program, it's coming from a good place to let you guys know what he inherited. But he's also talking about where they were, not where they are. And I believe Savannah State has a bright future ahead of them. And people forget this now. People think because coaches move on, they no longer going to have any ties to the program. I guarantee you, wherever Sean Quinn ends up, he's going to still lend his influence, any type of resource he has, BJ, to help that community, because it's about that community as on top of Savannah State, not just Savannah State. But look, I've been around a lot of coaches. I've been coached by a lot of coaches, and they don't make them like Sean Quinn. As transparent as he was, as open as he was, as given as he was, but on top of that, he still got it done. X and O's, he knows the game, but he loves these young men. He's coached BJ obviously at big time programs, before even taking the job at Savannah State. It took a special man, a special person, a special individual to be the head coach of Savannah State, and I believe that Sean Quinn, fit all those. I know the OPO BJ is going to be out there, trying to find it. It's going to be hard to replace Sean Quinn for his impact on that community and that team. But shout out to Sean Quinn, man. He did it the right way. He kept it 100 the whole time. He dotted all the I's, crossed all the T's, but he did what he said he was going to do. That's all you can ask for. But no coach is there for every BJ. I mean, BJ, the team you love is, Florida State with Bobby Bowden. They're not going to be in a more 40, 50-year run. That's not going to happen. I mean, Bobby Bowden, outside of being one of the greatest, he's a unicorn. They're not going to give a coach that much. Well, John Calipari did sign a lifetime contract with Kentucky, whatever that means. But shout out to Coach Sean Quinn, man. He did it the right way. I'm happy for him. Wherever he ends up, like I said, I'm talking about the man first, the coach second, but he didn't, he left no stone unturned. He did it the right way, BJ. And did I say, I believe the Savannah State 4 years ago was in shambles. I believe they are much farther ahead now as a program, hopefully as a city, as a community, and hopefully they got to go out there and replace him now.
And I know Coach talking about the, the value of two potential candidates, his coordinators, offensive coordinator Russell DeMasi, defensive coordinator, Tommy Sims, coaches that have had a lot of success, big-time names that are obviously very strong candidates for Savannah State. BJ Bennett, Ben Troop here with you. We are glad to be with you on 3 and Out. We'll come back, and Greg Gilmore, former tackle for the LSU Tigers, will join us. We'll get his thoughts on an LSU program that Brian Kelly is now leading from Notre Dame to LSU, and we'll get his thoughts playing in the SEC West as well. He will join us next. 3 and Out on the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. We're glad to have you with us. It is 3 and Out on the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. BJ Bennett alongside Ben Troop, and college football news, SEC news all over the place, including, I think, a shocker nationally. Brian Kelly, longtime head coach at Notre Dame, the all-time winningest coach in Notre Dame football history, now at LSU. And with us now to talk about that, former star defensive lineman for the Tigers, Greg Gilmore. Greg, good afternoon. How are you? Greg, you with us?
Yep. I'm here.
Yep. All right, Greg, glad to have you here. Sorry about some technical difficulties there, but Brian Kelly comes to LSU from Notre Dame. You're talking about one of the top coaches in the country, a guy that's made the college football playoff a couple of times, close to 300 wins. When you found out Brian Kelly was the hire, what was your reaction?
Yeah, man. So, my initial thoughts were probably a little different from everybody else. I'm kind of close to LSU, and I know all the rumors. I know what's going on, and I thought Lincoln Riley was our guy. I honestly thought that, and I thought after we didn't get him that we were going to be going to our fourth or fifth options. You know what I mean? And so I was kind of sad to see that LSU didn't get who they wanted to get, and then I started doing my research on this coach, and I did a lot of research on this coach. I started to hear a lot of podcasts on this coach, and man, I really love this hire. Man. And I'll tell you what, besides his age, but besides where he coached at, man, he's a great coach, and he has the ability to, I think, take LSU to the next level.
And Greg, even sticking with that, most people understand how big of a brand LSU is, but what does it say about the brand when you can get a guy like Brian Kelly, who, let's face it, I mean, Notre Dame is the premier, it might not be the premier football brand in the country, but it's one of the biggest brands, if not the biggest in the country. To be able to get a coach of that caliber to come to LSU shows that LSU, it becomes, outside of being a big-time school, it's Mr. Steele, your coach right now.
Right. And first of all, you got to think about this. First of all, I want to say that the LSU head coach is the best job in the state of Louisiana. I'll say that. And second of all, you're not going to be a 60-year-old coach, one of the most winningest coach, and not be ready to take on a heavy challenge, in coaching in Baton Rouge, and not just coaching, everything that comes with it. A lot of politics, a lot of meeting mayors and shows and getting bigger time recruits and stuff like that I think that he didn't have on that platform he had in Notre Dame. It is going to be a great addition to what he already can do.
So, Greg, you won plenty of big games at LSU. What does Brian Kelly have to do to get LSU back to that championship level, to make LSU be the program it can be once again?
Well, first off, I think that he needs to hire a good coaching staff, especially for this first year. And I'll tell you why I think that. I think that, one, this is a different culture in Louisiana, South Louisiana, and LSU culture is a different culture. I think that he needs to work on recruiting in a different culture, a different set of guys. So I think that first he needs to keep some coaches there that can maybe show him the culture of LSU. But I think, one, we need to recruit offensive and defensive line. That's the basis of it. And he is known for that very consistent offensive line there at Notre Dame. I remember we played them twice since, in my college days. I went against Quentin Nelson and some of them guys that are still playing in the league. And I think that, because I actually I saw an interview when he was talking about how, there's some guys in the country, some of the top, 5-star guys that he can't even talk to, can't even get a meeting with, because got teams like LSU and Alabama. So now that he's in this position and he has the resources, I think that he can, I think he'll do something big, man, honestly.
And Greg, speak to that a little bit more. I mean, you being a North Carolina guy coming down to South Louisiana, people think it's just football, but like you said, no, it's a full culture in Louisiana that you got to get adjusted to. Football is just what you was there for. What was your biggest, adjustment coming from North Carolina down to South Louisiana when you were a player?
Well, the biggest thing is the information, man. I come from a small town in North Carolina where I didn't learn the best technique. I didn't learn about a lot of different concepts of defense. Then you go to places like Louisiana, places like Georgia, places like Texas, where they breed and they bleed football. I think that's the different shot. That was the biggest thing for me. And just kind of connecting that bridge between understanding actual football and understanding how serious people take it here. And I think that he has those. He has that, man. I feel like he needs to definitely keep some coaches in the coaching staff. I know Coach Raymond is an OG, and he's a great recruiter. Me personally, I think, one of my best friends, Christian Lockacher, I think they need to bring him back because he was one of the top recruits in all of LSU, when he was there as a grad assistant. I think that stuff like this, I feel like, just kind of at least until he gets his feet wet and he understands the culture of LSU and big-time SEC football.
Greg Gilmore here with us on 3 and Out, former star defensive lineman for the LSU Tigers. Of course, LSU hires Brian Kelly in from Notre Dame. You talked about that physicality because LSU every year, big-time offensive lineman, defensive lineman, for all that LSU does, and, the star quarterbacks, receivers, defensive backs, obviously, how much of what the Tigers do starts right there in the trenches?
Well, I think that every single year, man, LSU has the best skilled players in America. I mean, you got guys who, even this year, you see second and third string wide receivers coming out having big games. You see guys, every skill position is full of guys. But when it comes to winning games in the SEC, it has to start up front. It has to. Because you're going to go, I go against guys every single day, 350-pound guards and centers every single day, every single week. There is no off weeks where you're playing guys who are good at outside zone schemes, man. You're going to go against Alabama. Then you're going to go against Arkansas, who runs the ball 50 times a game. You're going to go against Georgia, who are going to run the ball 30 times a game. So you need to start up front, in my opinion.
And Greg, I know BJ keep mentioning you being a star D lineman. Talk about that D-line tradition, at LSU yourself, Glenn Dorsey, Marcus Spears. You guys done put some guys out. And I never ever look at it as how long a guy played in the league. Y'all boys been putting them out for a long time, definitely on that D-line.
Yeah, and I think it's all another culture thing. We always have guys who are so dedicated to LSU, like myself, like Glenn, like guys like Sam Montgomery, guys that come back. They come back and they put that pressure on us. Hey, listen, man, this is LSU football. This is the LSU defensive line. We take it very serious. So I feel like that a lot of pressure and a lot of pride and, in a sense of I don't want to let my past and my future defensive linemen down. And I think that's what pushes us to be always to put out guys, always to put out that best talent.
Greg, if you're on the team now, what do you want to hear from Brian Kelly? First meeting with him, first interaction. What are you looking to hear from your new head coach?
Yeah, I want to know exactly why he's taking this big of a job. I want to know his why. I want to know his motivations, because his motivations are going to motivate the team. Are we talking about you just want to come in here and win 10 games? Are you talking about going to a national championship? Are you talking about elevating the mental and the physical level of each and every one of your players? So I just want to know his why, and I think that his why and his conviction and his motivation will carry the team as far as we want to go, because he has the resources, he has the everything that LSU has to offer. So,
Glenn, obviously, a guy like Brian Kelly coming from Notre Dame, rich tradition. It goes way back with Lou Holtz and all the things they've done. But what is going to be overwhelming or shocking to a Brian Kelly who knows about LSU, but this is what you didn't know about LSU that he's going to benefit from?
I think it's the resources, man. I think it's the ability to recruit guys that he's never even had a chance to sit down with before. Guys who are 5-star defensive linemen, guys who are 5-star offensive linemen, guys who are 5-stars at every position, who want to go to LSU, who understand that Brian Kelly's going there, and they're going to want to play for him. And I think that, and play for LSU. And I think that culture right there, that camaraderie, that ability to get any guy that you want in the country just because off the name of the school is something that I don't think he's ever had. And I understand that Notre Dame is a great program. I understand that, but the resources are a little different in one of the best jobs, in Louisiana.
Great perspective from Greg Gilmore, former star defensive lineman for the LSU Tigers. Greg, thanks so much for the time. We appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you.
And Ben, I thought it was great to hear him talk about when I meet Coach Kelly, if I'm a player, I want to hear your motivation. I thought that was really insightful because I've always put myself kind of in the position, right? I've tried to imagine, okay, I'm meeting my coach. What do I want to hear? It's not, here's my offensive philosophy. It's not, here's how I plan to recruit. I don't even think these are our goals. It's what's your why? Why are you here? Why am I listening to you? I thought that was great from Greg.
Yeah, Greg is keeping it 100, BJ, because he knows that, listen, LSU is a premier coaching destination. It's definitely a premier playing destination. And Brian Kelly, they want to know what makes them tick. We understand the money. We understand this is LSU. We understand this is the best, this is the premier spot to be in the state of Louisiana. Take nothing away from Louisiana, take nothing away from from the Saints and Southern and Grand, take nothing away from those schools. When you think about it, BJ, you were at LSU. Every coach before the last 3 coaches before you all won national championships. That's the one thing you haven't done yet in your career. You're the all-time winningest coach in Notre Dame history, but you never been the last team standing. And I think what he said to me, he said, you got resources. When I am the biggest brand in the state, I can pick who I want in the state. But now I got access to the guys who Georgia recruiting, the Clemson recruiting, the Alabama recruiting. Can you go out there and snatch some of those guys? But at the same time, hey man, the boot, they got a big-time coach, Brian Kelly, but Brian Kelly finna see what football was like in the Deep South.
Well, and you think about some of these coaches who will either soon or they already have had their introductions. What do you say? What's the approach? Whether it's Billy Napier, whether it's Brian Kelly, whether it's Lincoln Riley, whoever. Do you remember what Ron Zook said to you the first time y'all met?
I do remember. Ron Zook was a very, very fiery guy. He came in real even keel, but he told us, he said, listen, fellas, and I remember this. He says, this is my dream job. Some of you guys are here because you're good enough to be here. And if you don't want to be a part of the dream, I will get rid of you. He said, some of you guys will not be here because you're not going to fit what I'm trying to do. But I will give everybody an equal opportunity to show me what they made of. And BJ, in a sense, that was the first time that like you said, just being 100% honest with me. He said, this is my dream job, meaning I've been a coach a long time. He was on that 96 staff. I think he was a special teams coach on the 90s at Florida.
Right.
So he's been there before. And think about that, BJ. Every assistant coach wants to know how he measures up as a head coach. But not many guys will get a chance to coach a place like LSU and Georgia and Florida and Florida State. These are dream destinations. But I appreciate him just letting me know right now. And he said this, you're going to work. We are going to work extremely hard. He said from top to bottom. So if you work and you got that F on your chest, whether you in the training room, whether you an equipment man, whether you upstairs and administrative, we're going to work. And BJ, at the end of the day, like I said, I became the player I became because of the coach he demanded of me. He was very, very demanding. And it's not always going to be in the wins and the losses, BJ. That don't necessarily decide how great of a coach you are to me. But he was a great coach, man, because he was demanding. He expected nothing but the best from you. And like I said, Urban Meyer in 2006 won with Ron Zook guys. Every last guy on that squad got recruited by Ron Zook. But hopefully Brian Kelly comes in, BJ, understanding we know why you here. Well, you know why you're here. Tell us why you're here. And at the end of the day, coach, man, are you trying to get us back to the top? Or you just want to be another coach in the SEC? He gonna have to make a huge impression with that first initial, interaction with those players.
It is championship weekend. Clearly, we'll get into Alabama, Georgia, Alabama moving forward. When we come back, however, the ACC championship game is going to be fun. You have 2 of the best offenses in the country, Pitt and Wake Forest. Dave Holcomb, Southern Pigskin, will join us to break that down next. It's 3 and Out on the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. The ACC championship game this weekend is going to be a lot of fun, I think. You have two of the top 10 offenses in all of college football with Pittsburgh and Wake Forest, a couple of really good quarterbacks, Kenny Pickett and Sam Hartman there. And with us now from southernpigskin.com, has his preview up on the game, Dave Holcomb. Dave, good afternoon. How are you?
Good, guys. How are you?
Doing great. And I think at first glance, Dave, when I look at the offenses, when I look at the stats, when I look at the schedules and the final scores, this one's going to be more like a basketball game. Do you think we see a lot of fireworks and highlights Saturday in Charlotte?
Yeah, I think so. Two of the better quarterbacks in the league. 2 weeks ago, maybe a similar matchup with Kenny Pickett going up against Brendan Armstrong, and Hartman has had a similar season to Armstrong in terms of the stats and more team success, better offense around him at Wake Forest. So, but yeah, I see the matchup being similar with a lot of points being scored, and it's going to be exciting.
Dave, why is it all year long Wake Forest has been kind of waving the flag for the ACC, kind of been obviously superseding expectations, but why no respect, given to the Demon Deacons? It's not their fault that they've outplayed everybody and they're not Clemson, not North Carolina, not Miami.
Yeah, I completely agree. I don't think they've gotten enough respect. The only thing I would say, maybe why they haven't, I don't think this is the reason, but this could be a reason why, is the defense is a subpar unit. They're 13th in, I believe they're 13th in overall defense in the ACC, 13th in run defense at least. 11th in total defense in the ACC, yards allowed. So that's a leaky unit, and a lot of their games are high scoring. They have to outscore people to win, and they have a great offense. But even in modern college football, I think if you're going to be taken seriously, you do have to play some type of defense.
And Dave, talk about the season Kenny Pickett has had. I believe he's the first quarterback ever in the ACC with 4,000 passing yards, 40 passing touchdowns. You're talking about an ACC Player of the Year. You're talking about a guy who could finish pretty high in the Heisman Trophy voting. Just how special has Kenny Pickett been this season?
It's been really special. I mean, people, I think, in Pittsburgh have been starting to compare him to Dan Marino, and that I'm from Pittsburgh, so when you start comparing guys to Dan Marino, I mean, that's pretty special. Marino is the class of quarterbacks in an area of Western Pennsylvania where they produced a lot of quarterbacks, either going to local colleges or just in high school. So Kenny Pickett is right up there this season anyway. That he's put together has been really special, and I'm looking forward to seeing what awards he can get this postseason, what he does in the bowl game and the ACC championship, and then I'm looking forward to seeing where he goes in the NFL draft. The Steelers are going to be looking for a quarterback. Maybe he doesn't play in a different stadium next year.
How special do you think both of these teams have been this year? From a standpoint of obviously they got two great quarterbacks, and do you see in this being more of the norm for the ACC moving forward, or was it just an outlier type year?
That's a good question. I hope it's more of the norm. Quarterback play is what drives tickets and fans, and honestly, it drives recruiting too. I mean, if you're a wide receiver or a top running back, you want to play on a good offense. You want to play with a great quarterback. So if the ACC wants to be taken seriously as a league and have their middle tier teams like Wake Forest or Pitt, if we want to call them that, be considered for top 4 rankings, college football playoffs, then yeah, I think they have to hope that the quarterback play continues to be like it was this past season. It gives the league name recognition, and it makes for the game really exciting games and matchups, just like this weekend's matchup.
I wanted to ask you a philosophical question, Dave, about the ACC, where I think clearly going back to the beginning of the season, most people thought, okay, you're going to have Clemson versus either North Carolina or Miami, and you have kind of the star power there. But at the same time, if the ACC is going to develop that depth where, like you said, like the Big Ten, like the SEC, quote unquote, second tier teams are viewed with kind of a national appeal, don't you have to go through a process where then to that point, it's not just Clemson and Miami or whoever, Virginia Tech, in the title game every year?
That's really true. And, in most sports, parity is a good thing. But it seems like in college football, it's not a good thing, at least if you're looking at each conference, SEC, yeah, they've had, Auburn rise up a couple of times, and I'm probably forgetting a couple, Florida's risen up a couple of times maybe to go to the championship game. But it's been Georgia, it's been a lot of Alabama. And I think that's true with the Big Ten. It's almost always Ohio State is the first year. It's not Ohio State. So I like following ACC football because it's been a lot of Clemson, of course, but after Clemson, it is a lot of parity, and it's very interesting. And I don't think a league should be put down because it's competitive, just because maybe there isn't an elite team. This year, maybe there wasn't an elite team in the ACC, but there were a lot of very good teams, and we're getting a matchup that I wrote about in my preview that is historic, not just because of the quarterbacks, but some school is going to win a championship for the first time in a really long time. Wake Forest, first time since 2006, and Pitt has never won a conference championship game. So that, to me, is just as exciting as following a dynasty.
I mean, I know you said it's not about the quarterbacks, but when you think about quarterback play in the ACC this year, I know we got the two headliners, with Hartman and Pickett, but when you think about, what Cunningham and those guys have done, at Louisville, you talk about Sam Howell, who I think he's right around 90 touchdowns for his career. I know people don't like the ACC, especially when Clemson isn't doing well, but the quarterback playing the ACC this year, you got some guys that's going to be playing on Sunday.
Absolutely. This has to be the best. Maybe not ever, but the best of recent memory, I would say, a quarterback play in the ACC. And I agree with you. I think a lot of these guys are going to be drafted and are going to be successful in the NFL. Daniel Jones is the guy that comes to mind, has been drafted lately out of the ACC. Deshaun Watson not playing in the NFL right now. Jones is struggling. I think Pickett, Howell, Hartman maybe in a couple years. These guys are going to be that next, I hope they're the next part of the next generation of quarterbacks in the NFL.
Dave Holcomb, SouthernPigskin.com. Dave, you mentioned you have your preview up. What's your prediction? Give us a pick for this weekend, and what's going to be the one thing that determines who wins this game?
I went with Pitt. Off the top of my head, I think I said it was going to be 51-48. I'm expecting a high-scoring game, close. And I think Pitt's defense is just a little bit better. That I think they're going to get a couple key stops and be able to outscore Wake Forest just because I think their defense is a little bit better. Pitt plays better in the secondary. They can lock up. Usually they can lock up man-to-man on opposing wide receivers, which will be a key matchup in this game because Wake Forest has the two big 1,000-yard receivers from the regular season. So I think as we can talk about quarterbacks a lot, but I think the defense, the difference might be Pitt's defense.
Dave Holcomb, SouthernPigskin.com. Dave, enjoy the game this weekend. Thanks so much.
Thanks. You guys too. Enjoy.
And Ben, I think it's going to be a great game. I agree with Dave. I know, listen, the headliner is the SEC championship game. We know that. You don't have top 5, top 10 implications here, but two great quarterbacks. And I do want to go back to this point because Kevin made this years ago, right? The ACC is in a situation where, and maybe it's less to the extent, obviously, with Florida State than it was a half decade ago. But so many people evaluate the ACC solely through what Clemson does, what Miami does, and then maybe North Carolina, FSU, and VT. And it's like anybody else is like, oh my gosh, Wake Forest, Pitt, Georgia Tech, or Louisville, Boston College. And I think that's so unappreciative of the depth of the league. I mean, these are programs that have national awards candidates at quarterback, guys that are going to be drafted, big-time head coaches, and these are programs that play really good football. Wake Forest, who Dave mentioned the wide receivers there, Jakari Roberson and A.T. Perry, both have over 1,000 yards. They have two 1,000-yard receivers. You're talking about an offense that has been really talented. Kenneth Walker, the Heisman Trophy candidate at Michigan State, he was at Wake Forest last year with Sam Hartman, with these guys. Dave Clawson's done a great job. Kenny Pickett might be the number 1 overall pick in the draft. I've seen some mock drafts that have that. So, look, it's not the SEC championship game. It's really good football. I think it's going to be compelling. I like Dave's pick, 51-48. It's going to get wild. It's going to get weird. Check this game out And if you don't know a ton about Pitt, Wake Forest, give these teams a chance on Saturday. I think they'll impress you.
I will say this, BJ. I mean, Lewis Riddick said he did a special with Kenny Pickett. I mean, I got another guy that went to Pitt. People talk about tradition-rich colleges.
Oh,
You don't want to start talking about Pitt. And for Kenny Pickett to even be in the same stratosphere.
I mean, hold on a second, though, because people don't appreciate that either. Dan Marino, Tony Dorsett. You're talking about Larry Fitzgerald, Darrell Revis,
Aaron Donald.
Yeah.
I mean, the list, when you start talking about not just some of the best in college, but some of the best to ever do it in the pros, and that's what
Curtis
I like.
Martin.
BJ, that's what I like the most about these two teams. It's it's so much built up to the game. They get to tell you about the tradition. They get to tell you about what you haven't seen. But look, BJ, I mean, the fact that you got two premier quarterbacks in this game, it should be high scoring. But Mr. Kenny Pickett, man, it's going to be his time to shine, BJ, because sometimes, even though they won't be in the running for the college football playoff, the world gets to watch these two great teams, two great quarterbacks on display. I think they're going to definitely put on a show.
I like those Pitt uniforms, too, with the
They
script.
are nice. They
with
are
the
nice.
Script Pitt there at the top. It's going to be fun. Championship weekend coming up. We're going to get into Georgia, Alabama in just a little bit. But along those lines, there's a stunning development we're going to get to next segment. It's 3 and Out on the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. May have to get some clarification on this moving forward, but Ben, this is just a story that's hard for me to process. SEC championship game, Saturday, ATL, number 1 Georgia, number 3 Alabama, about as big of a game as you can have outside of the national championship. Tickets going for good luck. If you're getting tickets, you're going to pay. Apparently, allegedly, and I'll try to get some further confirmation during the break, Christian got offered tickets by one of his buddies. Apparently, one of his buddies, Christian's from Atlanta, called and said, hey, man, I got an extra ticket to the SEC championship game. Now, as we know, Christian is Mr. UGA, loves the dogs. He said no. And I was talking, okay, you're nodding as someone who doesn't watch your own team play, but I was talking to him very briefly earlier, and I don't know if you guys got into this, came on second down, but he said, I could be at home. Apparently, Christian likes to watch games by himself where nobody can stress him out or add to the anxiety. He can, pace or flip the channel or do whatever he needs to do. And if you're in Atlanta, I guess you have to travel and do all that. But if you're there, it's an environment where it's in your face. Maybe if you're superstitious, that impacts the outcome. I don't know the reason, but Christian Gokel apparently turned down tickets to the SEC championship game. Your thoughts?
Christian Gokel is a smart man because a real fan will not do anything that will jeopardize the future success of the team. Christian has watched every game from his couches, from his home. And
they're undefeated.
Yeah, undefeated. No. Listen. And the thing about Christian is Christian goes, look, listen. Christian said maybe when Christian is much older, and, he can go and enjoy the game without actually caring about the outcome, then maybe he'll take it. But as of right now, Christian's like, how dare you? Number one, whoever Christian's friend is knows better.
Okay, but is there a counter in this regard? And I actually very much, unlike Kevin, appreciate that principle. I do think if what you're doing's working, you stick with that. But let's say Christian goes and Georgia loses. You're still going to the playoff. So if there was ever a game to go to where you could possibly stomach the risk of you negatively impacting the outcome, but still appreciate, that's an all-time story. That's 30 years from now. You're telling people, yeah, I was at the 2021 SEC championship game. That's a lifetime experience. Could you handle it if you cause a little bit of negative energy to go against the dogs, knowing that if that happens, you still go to the playoff?
No, BJ, because the thing about it is the reason why we love football is because of the teams we love and the things we make up about the teams we love. If Christian goes to the game and Georgia loses, Christian's going to say, see? Because that's what it really is. You're watching the game for the game, but you're watching the game and say, what did I do? I don't usually eat this. I don't usually sit here. We make up more stuff about our team, win or lose, than anybody ever could. So Christian is saying, look, I will say this, and this is how you know Christian is a former football player. If I'm not going to be the reason they win, I refuse to be the reason why they lose, and I have nothing to do with it.
I could bring this up. I don't know if you guys are here. No, I don't know if you guys are here. No, you don't even know what I'm going to say.
Okay.
I don't know if you guys are here for this today, but I think you could make an argument statistically and mathematically that if Georgia loses on Saturday, they're more likely to win the national championship.
Hold on. How quick
because,
you going to tell me that they lose?
No, but that's what I'm saying. Because each game you win in a row makes it more likely the loss is coming.
What game was it? What game number was it when Alabama finally lost to A&M? Was it 20? Was it 21?
Right.
Like
they won like 22, 23 in a row. The more you win in a row, the more likely it means you're going to lose your next one. You go ahead and reset the win-loss equilibrium. You move the odds back in your favor, and you don't suffer by dropping out of the playoff. It might be like the best case scenario for Georgia to lose on Saturday, hit the reset button on the odds, and then go back to the drawing board real quick, have some time to address it, and go win a national championship.
Is that the greatest story of all time, BJ? The key to Georgia winning the national championship was to finally be undefeated, lose, because like you said,
the key to winning everything is losing. Cam, in the NCAA basketball tournament, you don't want to win 7 in a row going into the dance. You want to lose. Yes, you want to lose your second to last game of the regular season, reset the numbers, then get in, then get hot.
So the whole thing about it is not only is it the key to winning is losing. If you lose Alabama, are you almost guaranteed a win in the national championship?
Well, I guess the counter to that counter would be if you lose to Alabama, you might have to play them again, and you don't want that. This is a lot to think about. This is a lot to process. All right. We'll come back. We're going to have Troop Talk coming up in hour 2. Adam Schuler, former Gator defensive lineman, talking to real football players on the show. I'm saying like defensive linemen, guys who tackle people. talking with those guys on the show. We'll chat with him. Glad to have you with us. It is 3 and Out all across the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. We are streaming live on the web, espncoastal.com. What's up? It's 3 and Out on a Wednesday afternoon. BJ Bennett alongside Ben Troop. It's Wednesday, so Troop Talk coming up in about a half hour. Former Florida Gator defensive tackle Adam Schuler will sit down with Ben for a conversation. We'll also preview the SEC championship game as we move forward. And Ben, I think this is a very fair question to ask. I do. Are we overlooking Alabama? Is Alabama maybe a little underrated entering Saturday? Now, it's fascinating to phrase it like that. That sounds nuts. But we'll get into that. I think it's a fair question. Also want to talk about the psychology of this matchup. A lot of interesting storylines at play, but it is time for Take 3. We bring in Cam Ursery as we take 3 here on 3 and Out.
All right, take 3, fellas. Take 1. Which NFL quarterback would you rather have for the rest of the season? Kyler Murray or Dak Prescott?
Ooh, okay.
Take it.
I'm gonna jump out there first. To the Dallas Cowboy fans, and that which is the biggest fan base in America.
Didn't you have a Cowboys fan come up like we did a remote in Savannah recently and came up and had an issue with you?
Yeah. Which is fine. I understand. I mean, because I listen. At the end of the day, Dallas gonna find a way to mess it up. But that's another show for another day. I'm gonna go with Kyler Murray, and this is why. PJ, Dak Prescott, I mean, he's a bad boy. He's under a different level of scrutiny because of where he plays, not just that he plays. And while Dak Prescott, while the defense has played better as of late, I mean, Dak is having to be doing more. I mean, the running game really hasn't been there. But for me, I like Kyler Murray, man. Kyler Murray is a guy that flat out gets it done. He got wheels. BJ, he's gonna make some plays with his legs, but he's always looking to get the ball downfield. I think they have the best record right now in the NFC. I know he's been banged up a little bit, but he's got about 2 or 3 weeks to kind of get them legs rested up. But for me, give me Kyler Murray and that offense. Even though I do like that, give me Kyler Murray.
I'm going to take Dak. I think there's a little more experience there, and I agree with all that you're saying about Kyler Murray. He's a superstar. But if I have a stretch run to go through, I want the guy with a little more experience, and I do think that Kyler Murray has better weapons around him. I think Dak Prescott has been able to find that proficiency without necessarily those multiple superstars to throw the ball to. So love both guys. But I will lean Dak Prescott, I think, predominantly because of the experience here.
I definitely go Kyler Murray. And the reason why I say that is I think there's a stat out there when Dak Prescott doesn't have Ezekiel Elliott rush for 100 yards. He's like 0-17, 0-16. Ooh. I want to say there's a stat out there. You could tell me if I'm wrong. But, I mean, Kyler Murray, he's in year 3 and he's lighting up the league. DeAndre Hopkins, AJ Green, all those type of guys, and they're the best team in the NFL. Maybe them are the Packers, but I'll definitely go Kyler Murray. Take 2, Mac Jones or Tua Tagovailoa.
All right,
Tua's been better.
Now, I will say this: Tua has, as of late, Tua's been looking around saying, "Y'all boys don't think I can go out here and get it done. Y'all think I'm injury prone. Y'all think I'm not good enough to go out here and compete in the National Football League for my football team." Well, go back to last week. Tua, he looked at Cam and said, "Cam, man, grew up watching you, but let me show you why I'm here too." But for all those reasons, I'm going with Mac Daddy. I'm going with Mac Jones. Mac Jones been doing it from opening day. Mac Jones is the reason why, Cam Newton, who's back with Carolina, didn't have a job. Mac Jones is getting it done, BJ, with them 2 tight ends, Hunter and Jonnu Smith. Mac Jones is taking this complicated offense of Josh McDaniels and made it his own. Give me Mac Jones, and I will say this, BJ, Mac, Tua, and Jalen Hurts, they was all in the same quarterback room. Have they dispelled that myth that Alabama quarterbacks can't make it in the league?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, all of those guys are studs. I will go Mac. I think Tua still needs to show that week-to-week consistency if I'm going to have him be my guy for the stretch run. Now, Mac doesn't have any experience. This is newfound territory for him. I mean, Tua's only got a few more games on his resume than Mac, but I think Mac has just that proficiency that's always there. Last year set the new FBS single season proficiency mark. This year he's maintained it. A little higher completion percentage than Tua. So because of that, I will go Mac Jones.
Tua has 4 games more than Mac Jones, 4 games more play. I'll just give y'all, I want y'all to see this real quick. Everybody praises Kyler Murray.
Whoa.
Right?
You got a direct head-to-head.
Yeah. Everybody praises Kyler Murray. Tua in his first 16 games is better than Kyler Murray in his first 16 games. Kyler Murray won Offensive Rookie of the Year. his first year. Everybody hates Tua for some odd reason. But with that being said, I still take Mac Jones, though. I still take Mac Jones, even though I think it's a lot closer. I mean, Mac Jones, man, he reminds me of Matt Ryan in a Patriots system. I mean, it's set for him perfectly. He's one of the most accurate quarterbacks in the NFL right now. He's smart, and man, Patriots are not going nowhere for the next decade
If
and
he
a
can stay
half.
healthy, he can stay healthy.
Yeah, if he can stay healthy, yeah.
Because you know OBL gonna be there for the next 10 years. No matter how old he gets, he gonna keep coaching.
Oh yeah, he's gonna keep coaching now. But this is my favorite one right here. Take 3. Tom Brady or Aaron Rodgers. This is the one.
All right. This is the one where BJ did this. He was like, okay, he was rubbing his hands together. Usually I would not go against old AA Ron. I usually wouldn't go against old AA Ron because when it comes to throwing that football in, BJ, and they gave him that man with the green eyes, Randall Cobb, to go along, but for me, with Adams and those guys, but for me, BJ, the reason why I would go with Tom Brady is Tom Brady is his best when he is doubted. Tom Brady is his best when he goes up against the best. This time last year in the Super Bowl, Tom Brady looked across that field and said, "You think Patrick Mahomes finna take my crown? I'm still on this throne. He'll get to sit here when I get up, and right now I'm still here. And I did it on a bum knee last year. So for me, love Aaron Rodgers. I think he is one of the greatest first ballot Hall of Famer, but the GOAT, and that's the GOAT, that's GOAT, the greatest of all time, or GOTE, the greatest of the era, that he's both of them. I'm going to go with Tom Terrific.
I think you have to. I mean, I know you can look at Aaron Rodgers and say Aaron Rodgers is in his prime.
Yes.
Aaron Rodgers is balling. Green Bay's great. But we're talking about you have, 4 or 5 games to go. You get one quarterback. Dude, Tom Brady's older than Kevin. I mean, that's amazing to think about. And he's out there, and I think in a clutch stretch for a 3-4 game period, the playoffs, the Super Bowl, that's still at 44 years old, the guy you want. And I don't really think there's any hesitation or doubt. Got mad respect for Aaron Rodgers. I mean, look at what he does. And Ben, like you said, maybe the best pure thrower of the ball in terms of accuracy we've ever seen. But when it's crunch time in the league, it's about that persona. It's about the confidence that not only Brady has, but the confidence he gives everybody else. I think it's Brady.
Brady's the greatest player of all time. Aaron Rodgers is the best quarterback of all time. And this let me know how good Aaron Rodgers was. In a down year, he had 25 touchdowns and 2 picks.
League MVP.
They called that a down year. 25 touchdowns, 2 picks. Just to give some facts, this week they beat the Rams, who have a top 10 defense.
Yep.
He had 3 missing offensive linemen. Didn't have Aaron Jones and missed 3 of his best defensive players. And was playing on a broken toe. Went out there 300 yards, 3 touchdowns. I think he's the best quarterback in the league. I'm going to say it. They got the best record. Aaron Rodgers is my favorite player ever, too. So that has nothing to do with
this.
Yeah,
I'm a little biased. That has nothing to do.
I'm a little biased, but man, he does some amazing things, and he doesn't turn over the ball. That's my biggest thing. When you don't turn over the ball, it's hard to lose games. His defense hasn't came through for him.
I mean, and one thing you didn't know,
but to
too,
confirm, you're taking Aaron Rodgers.
I take Aaron Rodgers. Oh yeah, any day of the week.
And I always know that listen, 2 things about Green Bay that we learned today. One, we learned that your favorite player of your all-time Cam is old Aaron, and BJ's favorite tight end of all time, Mercedes Lewis, who plays for Green Bay. That's
Jaguars
BJ's
legend.
Jaguars legend is BJ's favorite tight end of all time.
Did he have a one-handed touchdown catch?
Hey, BJ, listen. Shout out to Mercedes Lewis. Getting it done in year 17. UCLA, a first-round pick. He was the first-round pick that year.
Maurice Jones-Drew,
second-round pick. But shout out to Mercedes Lewis, man. 17 years in the league, man. Get it done, man. Hopefully, he's trying to get that cup.
I think he's the first-round pick Aaron Rodgers ever threw a touchdown to. In all these years, he's the only first-round pick he's thrown a touchdown to. That's crazy.
Because Jimmy Graham and Donald Driver and Devontae Adams was a second-round pick.
Yep. He's never thrown to a first-round pick. He's the only one.
State, right?
Yep. He's the only one.
All right, man.
All these other quarterbacks, they've had plenty of first-round picks. He doesn't have a lot of weapons.
Hold on. Doesn't Green Bay have a receiver in the first name Geronimo, something like that? Geronimo?
No, that was a few years. I know they have Valdez Scantlin.
Yeah, NC State. I know where guys went to college, man.
You're talking about Valdez Scantlin?
Yeah.
No, I didn't know where he went. I'm not gonna lie to you.
Listen, Ron,
and Lazard.
So the boat versus the GOAT. You're gonna go with the boat, the best of all
Yeah, I
time.
go with the
All
boat,
right,
man.
all right.
I go
There
with
is
the
a
boat.
difference.
There is a difference.
It is.
Best and greatest. All right, Cam, thanks. That'll do it for Take 3. We'll come back with more 3 and Out on the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Back here with you, 3 and Out on the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. And I think the question, as we look at the college football playoff poll from last night, is what happens if Oklahoma State wins? They're 5, Cincinnati's 4. If they win the Big 12 championship, Cincinnati wins, beats Houston. Does Oklahoma State hop Cincinnati? Ben, I wanted to get your thoughts on that quickly. No, but I mean, I understand what you're saying, but if Oklahoma State wins, they have the higher ranked win in championship week. What happens? Who's the number 4 team? Ben, go ahead. Oh,
My apologies. No. So
Hello?
you're going to block me to keep me from
it's
coming
called a
in?
box out. I mean, look, it's I have to go Torian Prince on it. It's a rebound.
You know it's going to be Oklahoma State. You know, BJ, at the end of the day, it's going to come down to national appeal. Now, BJ, you've been riding the wave for the Cincinnati group. I mean, it was Cincinnati and Coastal last year. If Cincinnati gets jumped by a team, not because the team is better than them, but Cincinnati don't have that national appeal, who do you think it's going to be?
Well, I think there's a lot to think about, and I was trying to rush through it because I wanted to get 2 quick questions in there for you. But right now, after last night, it's Georgia 1, obviously, 2, the new playoff rankings. Georgia 1, Michigan 2, Alabama 3, Cincinnati 4, Oklahoma State 5, Notre Dame 6, Ohio State 7, Ole Miss 8, Baylor 9. I know you mentioned maybe a scenario, Cam, earlier in the week where Baylor could jump up there, but I think what you're looking at, if Georgia and Michigan win, Georgia against Alabama, Michigan against Iowa, that's your 1-2, quite clearly. And then Alabama will drop out, we presume. And I think if Cincinnati and Oklahoma State were to win, given that they both have games this Saturday, Notre Dame does not, and Cincinnati and Oklahoma State are both playing ranked teams, they would just slide in. And it would be Georgia, Michigan, Cincinnati, and Oklahoma State. That would be my guess. Now, where it gets interesting is what happens if Alabama beats Georgia, and now you have an Oklahoma State team, if they and Cincinnati both win, an Oklahoma State team that just beat number 9 Baylor in the conference title game, avenged their only loss from the regular season, and then you have Cincinnati, who is ahead right now, but Oklahoma State would be adding a win over a top 10 team. Cincinnati would be adding a win over number 24 Houston. As much as it would hurt, I think there's a big part of a lot of us that wants to see Cincinnati get in. The system has boxed people out at the G5 level. We probably have not valued the resumes enough. But if you say Oklahoma State will have won a Power 5 conference, their only loss during the regular season was to Baylor. And in this scenario, they beat Baylor, who's in the top 10.
Which will be what Georgia did when they went to the national championship year when they beat
That's exactly right. I think at first glance, and to be fair, I do not have both resumes in front of me, but I think at first glance, it would probably make sense, if that were to happen, for Oklahoma State to be the 4.
Think about this about with Cincinnati too, though, BJ. We always talk about if Georgia loses, if Alabama loses to Georgia by a field goal, does Alabama still get in? Does Cincinnati has to look impressive winning? Because most teams just got to win. Remember yesterday we were talking about how Alabama gets criticized by how they win, and if only lost once, Cincinnati got to look impressive in their win.
Maybe I don't know how you let's say for sake of argument this happens. And again, Oklahoma State plays Baylor, who's number 9 or whatever it is. Cincinnati plays Houston, who's number 24. So they're both top 25 games. What if, let's say, Oklahoma State wins by 3 and Cincinnati wins by 40? How do you compare a 3-point win over a top 10 team versus a 40-point win over a top 25 team? This may be off base. Tweet at us at Pigskin Radio. Generically speaking, okay, if I'm going to vote on the playoff committee and poll, I'm going to look at every possible data point. I'm going to watch every game. But just speaking theoretically, I'm normally not a big fan of margin of victory. And the reason is because, and everybody listening knows this, we all know this, you can win a game by 17 points and dominate and absolutely control the game. You don't have to beat somebody by 24, 31, 38 to dominate or resoundingly prove that you're better. And in some ways, I know there are exceptions to this, but in some ways, to me, all margin of victory does is prove desire. You wanted to run the score up. You wanted to win by 28. You wanted to win by 35. Once you're beating someone, I mean, if you're beating a team at the end of the fourth quarter by 28 or 42, you're clearly much better than them. I think a lot of times that 14-point margin comes down to, did you stay aggressive with your play calling? Did you keep your starters in? And I don't think those are the things that should determine who plays for a national championship.
Most of the time, if you're up by that many points, you're going to run the football to speed.
Yeah. I mean, so margin of victory, once you establish that you are clearly the better team, to me, all an extra touchdown or 2 or 3 proves is that you wanted to score those more points or those extra points. So I'm not a huge fan of that. Now, I think Cincinnati can come out and flex and dominate and prove that they are one of the best teams in college football by winning 27-6. It doesn't have to be 57-6, but I do think there's a part of our psyche that when we see that lopsided margin, we go, oh, wow, that's an A++. I don't think we should think that way, but I think to a certain extent we do.
BJ, I mean, with everything we always talking about with the college football expansion with the college football playoff, do you think right now this model of 4 is actually proving itself to be right in this scenario?
That's an interesting question because I don't know that we should use if the system works in whatever our minds that means year to year as the determining factor for if it's right or not. Because I know a lot of people have said, oh, if you had an 8 or a 12 team playoff, you might not have great teams get in the postseason tournament, right? If we had a 12 team playoff, you probably have Baylor in there, even if they lose. Ole Miss, you might potentially, maybe a BYU could make an argument. Right, Ohio State would definitely be in. But to me, the goal, and a lot of people may disagree here, the goal of a college football playoff format is not to have the best possible matchups, the most exciting games, the most compelling teams, or even have the, quote, great teams only get in. What the postseason format should do is represent the body of constituents that it serves. And right now, you have 5 Power 5 conferences and 4 slots, not to mention the group of 5 and the independents. So if you were to ask me, would it be more compelling football to see BYU play Ole Miss? Maybe, maybe not, but I don't know that that's the right question. We're not supposed to be asking, would a 12-team or 8-team playoff provide better football? We're supposed to be asking, would a 8-team or 12-team playoff be more fair and equitable and representative of the teams that are allegedly Division I FBS?
Well, it goes back to the old notion of you go to the NCAA tournament, which to me is the greatest representation of college athletics. We talk about
everybody's got a shot.
And like you said, BJ, I said, look, if 8 teams get in, it's 130, if I'm not mistaken, Division I team.
FBS, yes.
Right? You telling me out of 130 eligible, quote, teams to make the playoffs, only 4? It's 5, P5 conferences. So I do look at it that way because at the end of the day, look, the one thing we gonna respect is if you're the last team standing. We do sometimes get caught up in the records at the end of the day when I'm like, dude, just because you lost don't mean you weren't the best team in the country that year. And just because you were undefeated don't mean you were the best team in the country that year. Now, undefeated seasons are very, very hard to come by, but I think if we're looking at the full body of work, most people consider Muhammad Ali the greatest boxer of all time. He lost. But still, people can still consider him just because you lose don't mean you ain't great. So I do believe that adding more teams is more of a true barometer, BJ, because like we said, Cincinnati is hopefully trying to do it for a different reason. We waving the flag for, conferences that's looked down upon. And maybe UCF was just ahead of their time. Because you know who was ahead of them? Boise State. They used to be that team back in there. So I do think going to an expansion is going to be the right thing to do first, because more variety means more teams get a chance to get in. And if you got more teams get a chance to get in, the right team, I think, going to win it because they're going to be the last team. If you was in it, you get a chance to win it. But if you was not, you definitely have your reasons to complain, especially when your body of work is warranted for you even getting an opportunity.
And the system we have now forces us, right, to compare, let's say, a 1-loss Oklahoma State, potentially, to an undefeated Cincinnati. But I'll ask this question, and I'll ask it even more prominently than maybe we asked it a year ago or asked it with UCF. If Cincinnati goes undefeated and doesn't get into the playoff, and maybe under this system that's the way it works out, and maybe that's the right call even, I don't know. We haven't seen what's going to happen yet on Saturday. What do you say to them? Cincinnati, you were a preseason top 10 team. You went undefeated. You beat a top 10 team on the road by double digits. Everybody said you needed to schedule P5 opponents. You scheduled a Big Ten opponent. You beat a nationally ranked team in your conference championship game. What more can you do? Like, what? Why are you Division I FBS? If you can beat a top 10 Notre Dame on the road, if you can win your conference title game over a ranked opponent, why are you FBS? There's nothing you can do to compete for a championship. And I don't know that that scenario is going to arise. It wouldn't surprise me. But I think that's why when we talk about playoff expansion, the right question isn't, would it be better football? The right question is, would it be better? Would it be a better format serving the teams that are in it? Because Cincinnati, there's a great chance, if things fall this way, that they can win every game on their schedule, beat a top 10 team, have one of the best wins in the country, and not even have a mathematical chance to compete for a title in the division they're affiliated with. That is why we need to expand the playoff, not because we may or may not see better games.
And we need to stop moving the goalposts. When people start talking about BJ, is that going to be better football? I think the answer is yes. Because you don't get to decide if it's not going to be better football strictly because you haven't seen the team that wants to play in it. No, a team that's earned the right to play in it. Because these two coaches, the Lincoln Rileys and the Brian Kellers, who just got $220 million to go to their respective schools, they haven't won in the playoffs. No one said anything to them. Oh, because they came from Oklahoma and Notre Dame. They're over in the playoffs. So what I'm going to say is, would it be better football? Yes. Because what happens is when you're a team that's been really, really good for so long, but the NCAA don't like you, this same Cincinnati team played Georgia down to the wire last year. And when people say, well, Georgia ain't have all their best players, that's an excuse you make when Georgia don't win. I say this, you could not want to be there and still win it because Georgia had already seen this when they lost to Texas. They wasn't going to do that twice. So if Cincinnati's in, is it going to be better football? It might be better than you thought. And Cincinnati might just come out on top. I don't think they don't put them in, BJ, because they don't think they're good enough. I think they know they are. And if we put them in and they win, we lose our argument.
Oh, if I'm Georgia, I'm terrified of Cincinnati. Why? I don't know, because I watched football last year.
There are two teams left, BJ. Think about it. Cincinnati, who saw you last year, and the Bully, who you got to beat on Saturday. I always say this, if you win the national championship, there was some bumps in the road. There isn't going to be a bigger bump in the road in Alabama, and there isn't a scarier team because of their resume than Cincinnati.
It's going to be a great championship weekend. We're going to dive into Georgia, Alabama in just a little bit. When we come back, though, Troop Talk, always enjoy that. Been with Adam Schuler, former Gators defensive lineman. We'll do that next, 3 and Out on the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Tomorrow we will be broadcasting live from Coach's Corner, 2nd down and 3 and out in Savannah and Thunderbolt. Hope to see you. Come on by. We will have interviews with, tomorrow afternoon, Kennesaw State head coach Brian Bohannon, Valdosta State head coach Gary Goff, and both of those programs in the playoffs. You think about Kennesaw State, the job they've done. They're into the second round after a win in the opening round of the FCS playoffs. They will take on East Tennessee State. The Owls.
Who?
The Owls.
Who?
Yeah, that's the new rule. The new rule on the show.
Cam was like,
It doesn't matter who says. If somebody says the Owls, you have to say who.
Who?
Yeah, every time. So Kennesaw State, East Tennessee State, second round of the FCS playoffs, and then Valdosta State. If Kevin was here, he'd be hyping it up.
I will say this. Was it West Georgia? When the West Georgia coaches come in one time,
About a couple years ago.
West Georgia coach Cam come in one day. He all hype. He's here recruiting the area.
Yeah, came in to say hello.
And Kevin got this look on his face like the enemy is in the building. Because Kevin is Valdosta State blazer through and through, and he gave us all hats. And me and BJ put them on, saying, Kevin just holding the hat, being courteous. And the dude walk off, Kevin's like, not wearing it. And to me, that's how strong a rivalry
And I believe
is.
Valdosta State beat West Georgia last weekend to advance. Yeah, dropped
60,
dropped almost 70 on them. So good timing with the story there.
Hey man, well, BJ, listen, I remember that story. I just remember, I'm like, why is Kevin looking at him like Kevin's like, I got to make sure I keep.
Oh, Kevin doesn't play when it comes to Valdosta State. I mean, I'm serious. And Valdosta State this weekend, they are into the quarterfinals of the NCAA Division II playoffs. You win Saturday, you're into the Final Four, and they will take on Bowie State. Valdosta State, the 1 seed out of their bracket. Bowie State, the 2 seed. So that should be a lot of fun. Yep, and we will hear from Brian Bohannon of Kennesaw State and Gary Goff of Valdosta State tomorrow on the show as the Owls and the Blazers compete for a national championship.
Do the Blazers got something they do? Do Kevin have?
I mean, we'll have to ask him tomorrow.
Kevin had to quote pick a name, for his video games. He picked KT Blazer. How original is that?
Yes, he did. I'm sure he appreciates you talking about that on the air.
All I'm saying is, Cam, before you was on the show, BJ used to say, what do you ask about Dungeons and Dragons?
No, they used to play like the Dungeons and Dragons, what? I don't know what the games are.
No. When you asked him, do he play? So Kevin, what you doing over there playing with Dungeons and Dragons? And Kevin was like, yes. I was like, oh my God. That's another that seems like. I know
Cam likes the games.
Cam was also born in '98.
I like video.
I'm just saying.
I mean, that is. Well, I mean, if we're going back into this from yesterday, what year was Kevin born in?
Kevin was born in 78. So think about it. Kevin was born 20.
If he's listening right now, Kevin, I'm sorry.
Kevin was born 20 years before Cam. God.
Well, yeah.
And then no. This was really making me feel old.
The game that everybody played, and we'll just go down this path. You took us down this path. Remember for a couple of months where everybody was playing Pokemon Go, and they would come in here, people would just be randomly on their phone, walking into the foyer.
I mean, we have fans. My child made me feel real good, during Thanksgiving holidays, BJ, because she was playing Tecmo Bowl on her phone, and she told me, "Daddy, you don't know nothing about this." I said, "No, young lady, that's what it all started." And I'm looking at them graphics, and I'm like, wow.
No. This is the ultimate reality check moment I have with my kids. So my kids have a game they play on, I guess it's a tablet, where literally this is the game. It's like a cartoon game. The game is you wash dishes. So you walk up and the game is you get the soap, you squirt the soap on the plate and you clean it, and then you put it in the dishwasher if you need to, and it comes out and it gets you got an 8 or a 10 on the cleanliness score. And I'm thinking they're sitting in the kitchen with real dirty dishes in the real sink, washing fake dirty dishes in the fake sink on the video game. And at that point, I had to look at both of them and just say,
no, that's not even it.
Y'all win.
No, my son, both of my nephews, maybe all of my nephews, I don't know if my oldest nephew Christian is doing it, they watch someone else play the video game. That's what they do.
That's stunning.
They go to YouTube. And they'll sit there for hours going, oh, and I'm like, but then I'll
You watch other people play video games?
And then when I go, what are y'all doing? They said, you don't know what that is? That's Ninja. That's so-and-so. He the man. I'm like, he's on level. And I'm like, so you don't want to play it yourself? No, I'm gonna go play it later. But right now, I'm trying to tell you. And so, BJ, at least we actually, if we weren't on the game, it's because it was only
All
one
right, real
controller.
quick. Favorite video game growing up?
Contra.
You know what that is, Cam? Super Mario Brothers 2. Where you could pull the vegetables out of the ground.
And listen,
or was that 3?
And Daytona 500 on Sega Saturn. You come in that thing. I'm just saying, Cam, we're gonna get Cam. We're gonna take you over here to one of these stores. That stuff that look like vintage items. That's what me and BJ used to play.
The old school Madden, where you would drop back to pass like Madden
Super
94,
Nintendo, Sega Genesis,
and the three frames would pop up, and you could look at your receivers. That was wild.
You know,
I want to say that was like
Kevin's first Madden had Tony Dorsett on the
no,
cover.
no. Kevin's first Madden, John Madden, was on the cover saying, tough acting to acting. But it's
there was a game on Sega called College Football's National Championships, and I loved it because, Florida State was that deal. I'm saying it was mid '90s, but when you would get ready to make a play, it would zoom in with like the limited technology it had. If my brother's listening, he knows you could hit the spin move, the juke, whatever, but it would zoom in so Charlie Ward could.
We know Thomasville, Georgia.
Was he not?
He was nice, innovator.
Is he not one of the all-time?
He is top five greatest, maybe even best of all.
Shout out to the '90s quarterback: Tommy Frazier, Danny Werfel.
Put some respect.
Charlie Ward
on them boys' names.
All right, we'll come back. A lot to get to in the final hour. We're going to talk Georgia and Alabama. Should be a lot of fun. Tweet at us at Pigskin Radio. It's 3 and Out on the Southern Pigskin Radio Network and on the web, ESPNCoastal.com. Busy final hour here of 3 and Out. BJ Bennett alongside Ben Troop. Should have Kevin Thomas back with us tomorrow. Really want to dive into this Alabama-Georgia, Georgia-Alabama matchup. I think the psychology of this pairing, Ben, is really interesting, and we'll get into something we've talked about briefly throughout the show. Are we overlooking Alabama a little bit? You said something, kind of the way you said it yesterday, Ben, stuck with me when we were talking about this game, and you said Alabama's lost one game by 3 points. And there's this kind of prevailing thought that they are an overwhelming underdog on Saturday. I think the line is around 6.5. And I've heard some people say, well, this, and this has to happen for Alabama to have a chance. Is that true? We'll get into that. But news of the day, if you haven't heard by now, Savannah State head football coach Sean Quinn has resigned as the head football coach of the Tigers. We'll get to what may be happening momentarily, but had a tremendous run at Savannah State and came on in February of 18 as the defensive coordinator, was then later that year named the interim. And you think about some of the successes, posted a 7-3 overall record in 2019, went 5-0 in Savannah State's first season of competition back in the SEAC. And then after the COVID year, this past year, 2021, 8-2, 5-1 in the SEAC. The Tigers had their first 8-win season since 1994. And I know a guy that made a big impact on the program, on the field, off the field, in the community. We all really enjoyed getting to chat with him and visit him and visit with him, get to know him. And Christian did a great job, of course, every week with the Sean Quinn Show. I know, Ben, you chatted with the team on a number of different occasions, but we absolutely wish Sean Quinn the best. And, man, did a great job at Savannah State.
He did an incredible job. Sean Quinn more than lived up to the expectations. He superseded expectations. Faced a lot of adversity from the time he got, decided to be the head coach at Savannah State. BJ, he got there when they was going through a transition. He understood, just how much behind the 8 ball they were as far as like facilities and, resources and alumni and boosters and so on and so forth. But the one thing Sean Quinn did, he never complained. He never ever talked bad about anybody. He had an incredible staff around him. He had incredible players around him. In 2020, they did not have a football season. Those kids just stayed the course. Something I said first hour, had a young man on his team that was diagnosed with cancer. And the young man had 2 questions. One, he asked the doctor, am I going to live? The doctor said yes. And 2, he asked Coach Sean Quinn, am I still going to have a scholarship? I think, BJ, he led the team when they did the Tiger Walk, when they had the spring game, for which we was up there calling plays, me, you, Christian go Kelly, as well as Kevin Thomas. I think the thing about Sean Quinn that can't be said enough is he's a good dude. Bigger than just being a football coach, he's a human being. He cares about those young men. He cares about the Savannah community. He cares about Southeast Georgia. He cares about Savannah State, but he cares about those young men. So he more than superseded expectation, and he did it the right way. I think too often at times when you come in behind the 8 ball like he did, you're going to find himself doing more criticism. You never heard him say a word. He never talked bad about the university or anybody around him. It was all about, let's get out there and recruit. BJ, one time he blessed us so many times on our show on Second Down.
Oh, man, during the pandemic was coming on every week. I mean,
whether he's in his car.
We would send him a text and say, Coach, we need you to come on and talk about the Bulls 30 for 30. He'd come on, give us 15 minutes. Always appreciated his availability and just enjoyed getting to know him. But just incredible to think about the success he's had throughout his coaching career. And I don't know if this has been independently, confirmed from the school or from coach or anything like that. I don't believe so to this extent, but Football Scoop reporting that Quinn is headed to Virginia Tech with new head coach Brent Pry. The 2 coached together at Georgia Southern back in 2010. So that a report from Football Scoop. Sean Quinn heading to Virginia Tech to be a part of the defensive staff there with Brent Pry. And we absolutely wish Coach the best, and will do a great job wherever he goes. But I know made a big time impact. And every time you would go spend some time with the program and talk to the team and talk to the players, I know you always had a great time.
My nonprofit, the Uncommon Crew, was blessed enough to be able to take our young crew, to Savannah. And OPO just was there, the athletic director. He talked to my crew. And then Coach Sean Quinn gave all my kids Savannah State shirts and just let them go through the facility. Got to meet the offensive staff, defensive staff, got to meet Coach DeMasi and everybody.
Yeah, great coach.
And BJ, he was like, Ben, just let me know when you want to come back and speak to the team. Sean Quinn is a good dude, man. He really, really is. And I think sometimes when you are a coach, BJ, we never ever see you past that. He's Coach Sean Quinn. No, he's the man, Sean Quinn. A man that has children. I think 2 daughters, if I'm not mistaken. But the one thing he never did, he never ever gave anything less than 100% to Savannah State. He is going to be missed. One time we called Sean Quinn outside of his mini travel. He's painting. I think he was painting the locker room, painting it, literally in the midst of painting it. So they don't make him like Sean Quinn, a man that's very, very well traveled, coached at a lot of good places, BJ. But yes, he's going to be missed at Savannah State, in that Savannah community, in the Golden Isles. But one thing about it, BJ, he's added another region to his recruitment whenever he gets it, because he's going to have to get out there and recruit. But
sure,
hey, man, you wish the best for coaches. Every coach wants to see how they measure up no matter what. But as far as like Savannah State or whoever comes behind Coach Sean Quinn, you got some big shoes to fill, but he would definitely be missed. Did the right way when he was there, did the right way in his departure. Shout out to Coach Sean Quinn getting it done.
And I know Coach has talked about his coordinators, Coach Demasi, Coach Sims, a couple of potential, great options there. But looking forward to the future at Savannah State, obviously. I think there's a lot of success to build off of, move forward with. But Sean Quinn, again, reports Football Scoop out that he is joining Brent Pry's staff. Brent Pry was the defensive coordinator at Penn State for the last 6 seasons. He is now the head coach at Virginia Tech. I think just today, maybe had the press conference in Blacksburg, and big time opportunity there with one of the top programs in the ACC. I know Coach Quinn's been around, has been at Tennessee. I think LSU was at, I believe, Georgia Southern with Brent Pry in 2010. So should do a great job wherever he goes, if it is with the Hokies there, and wish him the best.
Yeah, BJ, man, look, now I never had a chance to go to Virginia Tech before, never been to Blacksburg before, but being able to have guys like Coach Sean Quinn on that staff, he knows X and O's, people. Make no mistake about it. He knows X and O's, but I'm just happy for Coach Sean Quinn. I know it was a difficult decision for him to make, to be able to leave.
A lot of emotion. We saw today.
But something he said about, going, listen, you got to know this area, going into them outlets over there, Pooler, Georgia, walking in, seeing a Savannah State section. BJ,
can you bring that audio up?
Because what happens is, hey man, that's progress, people. For those of you who don't know, Savannah State, man, the flagship university in Savannah.
And this was some audio from Coach Quinn from earlier today.
All joking aside, this was the worst football program in America at any level. I can say that unequivocally when we got here. And, last night there was an interesting thing that happened. As a football coach, my daughter had a birthday a month and a half ago, and I still hadn't got her a present. And I got done recruiting up just past Pooler, so I stopped in Tanger Outlets, and I walk in the Nike outlet. And in the front door, I open the door, and there's a Savannah State section. And I'll be honest with you, I started bawling, because I'm like, this would have never happened a couple of years ago. And so that to me is success, to be honest with you. And, seeing the things people having pride and people stopping in town and people giving a rip, that's pretty cool.
And the emotion there, Ben, from Sean Quinn, I know cares very deeply about Savannah State, about Savannah, about his players, about the program, and deep emotion from him today when he's visited with the media.
Bigger than football, bigger than the game of football. It's about people. It's about the relationships. It's about how you impact those people. It's about the influence you have on those people. And BJ, Sean Quinn is the epitome of what you say when you talk about being a football coach. Has to be bigger than how much money you're making. Has to be bigger than your incentives. Has to be bigger than trying to win Coach of the Year or even winning the national championship. Are you affecting these young people's minds? Are you helping them become better young men to become, potentially grown men, and to be, because these men are going to be husbands and fathers and leaders. So I think Sean Quinn did that, because one thing I know he said they was getting out into the community well before COVID. Now, when COVID happened, obviously they had to shut things back. They're going into the community, going into these high schools, middle schools, hospitals, youth centers, showing their faces. They were a part of the Savannah community, not just in the Savannah community. Coach Sean Quinn, man, he left the lasting legacy, and he showed the right way to get it done. Plus, people, he got it done on the field too. Make no mistake about it. A lot of times you see Savannah State on that schedule, man. You're gonna have to deal with 4 quarters of football. But shout out to Coach Sean Quinn, Blacksburg. If once they make it official, they got a big time coach. I'm happy for him, man. Couldn't happen to a better guy.
Well said. We'll come back, talk SEC championship game next. It's 3 and Out on the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Are we overlooking Alabama? And by we, I don't mean Georgia. I mean the college football media, fans, because I I think Georgia has earned the right to be the favorite. I do. They are the number one team in the country. They've been the best, most complete, most consistent, most dominant team in the country. But just being honest, I've been a little surprised at how many national previews I've read, interviews I've heard, social media posts that have either said or intimated that it's going to take a lot for Alabama to win this game. And I'll be honest, that's surprising to me. And these are just some notes to think about. And I want to be clear, this does not mean that I don't think Georgia wins the game. This does not mean that I don't think Georgia is the favorite. But I've heard, and maybe you haven't heard this, but maybe I'm seeing a different stream of information. But I've just gotten the vibe that the common sense or common consensus, I should say, maybe it is common sense. The common consensus is that Georgia might win this game fairly comfortably. And think about this. You said something the other day that resonated with me, just because when you hear things sometimes, maybe you process it differently. You said Alabama's lost one game by 3 points. And I think part of the reason we view Alabama with this air of kind of weakness or being an incomplete team is because we're so used to that Alabama standard, right? Last year, undefeated, your wide receiver wins the Heisman, your quarterback sets the single season passer rating record, you're blowing out teams in big games. And when that's the standard, anything less than being maybe the greatest team of all time is going to be viewed as you taking a step back. And just because you're taking a step back from where you've been when you've been at your best doesn't necessarily mean you're taking a step back to the rest of the pack. And this is just something to think about. Alabama, as we mentioned, has lost one game on the road by a walk-off field goal. That was to Texas A&M. Alabama is ranked number 7th nationally in total offense and number 7th nationally in total defense. I mean, you think about balance, that's pretty darn good. Number 7 in the country in offense, number 7 in the country in defense. Beyond that, they arguably have the best offensive and best defensive player in all of college football. Bryce Young might be the Heisman Trophy favorite. He has 40 passing touchdowns, and Will Anderson might be a Heisman Trophy contender himself as an outside linebacker. He has 14 and a half sacks and 29 and a half tackles for loss. And oh, by the way, Nick Saban's your head coach. So I'll ask you, am I off? Am I sensing something that's not there? Is college football underestimating Alabama entering the SEC championship game?
Of course they are. For BJ, for everything you just said, but I'll always remember this. The hardest thing to earn in college football, maybe even in sports, is the benefit of the doubt. The hardest thing to overcome is your own reputation. Alabama has a reputation of dominating teams. When Alabama loses, college football stops. What? Who beat them? Because Alabama has earned the benefit of the doubt throughout the nation. Everybody doesn't. People in the West Coast don't watch Alabama. People in the Northwest don't watch Alabama. People in the South, on the West Coast don't watch Alabama. So if you're in the Northwest, you don't watch them, but you know who they are. Like BJ, there are cars out there that most people can't afford, but you know them when you see them. That's a so-and-so. That's what Alabama is. You know them when you see them. But what has happened to this point in the last 2 calendar years, Alabama has lost one time. Now, did it look good winning against LSU? No, they won.
That's what makes me nervous if I'm a Georgia fan, is that they've had games where they've had turnovers. They've had games where they've given up big plays. They've had games where they've gotten off to slow starts. So they've had lulls, and they've still won. And all of this may not matter. I mean, Georgia, if Georgia plays an A-plus game, I don't think there's anybody in the country that can beat them.
Mm-hmm.
But if they don't, I think Alabama has a higher ceiling than maybe we remember. And I think this team is much closer to being the Alabama of last year than being this, team ranked somewhere between 8 and 15 that's kind of going to the Capital One Bowl. I think they're closer to last year than they are that. I think this is a scary team.
Okay. I mean, BJ, you make a good point when you say if Georgia plays an A-plus game. What if Alabama plays an A-plus game? Because you just said Alabama has arguably the best defensive player. He can wreck a game. 14 and a half sacks means that's how many times he's won. That's how many pressures he's won. So that's a minute, right? Should arguably the talk of the 2021 season when you think about the team he's on and what he represents for the team he's on. What if he's on his backside because they can't keep Adam Anderson off him? And what if Bryce Young is throwing it through the air against a Georgia? Because the thing about Georgia, when we talk about Georgia's defense, we're talking about that front seven. We don't know how good or bad that back end is because they can't get the ball off with so much pressure.
Haven't been consistently tested.
So what I'm saying is, the one team you don't want to get their best from is Alabama. That's taking nothing away from Georgia. But if Alabama's at their best, BJ, we just talked about it. Alabama Alabama beating the team 20-0. It's like another team beating the team 50-0 because they'll put a stranglehold on you. Because no matter what, Kirby Smart learned everything he's doing from the guy he's going up against. But the one thing Nick Saban knows about Kirby, he knows everything about Kirby. Kirby doesn't know everything about Nick. And the thing about Nick is doing it with a guy in Bryce Young who's very, very young. But if Bryce Young and that offense can make Georgia's defense nervous, and then that defense for Alabama, because I guarantee you this, and I could be wrong, Brock Bowers is not going to beat Georgia. But we Alabama on Saturday. They're not going to let their best player beat them. George Pickens, I'm happy that he's.
We'll see.
We'll see how much he factors in, BJ. But this is what makes football, right? If you were Georgia, you're thinking, look, man, we've done this thing. Played them in the national championship just 3 years removed from that. First time we've had an undefeated season. First time going undefeated in the SEC in a long time with this schedule. We are the number one team, and Alabama isn't. Everybody's talking about us. Nobody's talking about Alabama. We are the favorite. Alabama is the underdog. Everything is going our way. But that's still Alabama. See, no matter what, Alabama has beaten everybody. But
and that's not just and that's not just saying it's still Alabama either. I mean, you can do it like this.
Yes.
Alabama probably has the best quarterback in the country, Bryce Young. Alabama probably, if you go off production this year, has the best receiver in the country in Jamison Williams. Alabama probably has the best offensive lineman in the country in Evan Neal. Alabama probably could be Jordan Davis, but probably has the best defensive player in the country in Will Anderson. I mean, this is going to be a battle. I'm expecting an absolute battle on Saturday, and I will be the first one to come in here on Monday if Georgia wins this game by 10, like some people are predicting, saying that is a that is a statement, and I think Georgia has that in them. I just think that some of the week of buildup has been, Georgia's clearly better. If this happens, Alabama has a chance. And I do not agree with that. I don't.
I'm not BJ, the one thing I do my best to staying away from is national narratives. Because you got to sell the game, right? You got to sell the game. I get that part. Georgia has been the clear-cut number one team in the country all year. Just because you're the number one team in the country doesn't mean you can't be beat, and that doesn't mean you're better than the number 2 or number 3. You've been the clear-cut number 1. Now, Alabama is still that immovable object. What you got to go back to the Texas A&M game, that's the first time Jimbo Fisher, and last time I checked, he's made a guarantee in the offseason. We coming for those dudes. And they beat them. But BJ, they haven't lost since. They haven't looked like themselves, but they haven't lost. People go, did Alabama win? BJ, you have to go through the box scores. You go, man, the box score tells a part of the story. It don't tell the whole thing. You want to see the product, but you also want to go and see what transpired in the box score. But the one thing Kirby Smart has not done yet is beat Nick.
Been right there.
Been very close. Very close. So sometimes, BJ, it's proving it to yourself. Because if Georgia loses, what does that do to the confidence of Kirby Smart?
I want to get into that. I want to get into some of that and sort of the psychology around this game. I think there are a lot of storylines, kind of mental storylines at play here ahead of this game. But I look at this as one of those games where the first 5 minutes sets the tone, because Georgia and Alabama both feel like they are good enough to win the national championship. And I think both is aware of the challenge that awaits. If you come out and you're Georgia and maybe you get an early touchdown or maybe you get a 10-0 lead, I think that is an affirming statement that furthers maybe even just the hint of doubt that might exist in the minds of the Alabama players. And I think that in Atlanta, with what's probably going to be a big-time Georgia crowd, kind of adds to the energy around the Dogs. Furthermore, I think this is a team defensively that if they get a lead and they can attack and you're one-dimensional, that's really difficult to overcome. On the other side, if Alabama comes out and they get up 10-0 or 13-3, do you look around and go, here we go again? Or is this a position we haven't been in yet if we're Georgia? We've seen Georgia just ease their way through even top 15, top 10 teams, but they haven't been in a game yet, correct me if I'm wrong, where it's 13-3 or it's 14-6 and you're down, or maybe and the Clemson game was back and forth. I get that, but this is a little bit different than a week 1 game. I think if Alabama can come out and dictate the tempo of the game early, that's their path to victory. And conversely, if Georgia can do the same, that's their path to victory. I think the first couple of drives on both sides are going to really set the tone.
It really, really is, BJ. And it's a battle. This is going to be a battle of will, not just skill. Isn't it crazy that Georgia has the headline defense, Alabama has the headliner on defense? Georgia has the better team. Alabama is still the greatest team in college football right now. Kirby Smart is the premier coach in college football, going up against the greatest coach to ever coach in college football. Storylines galore. But I think for me, I'm just looking forward to a good game. I think if you're a guy, like Stetson Bennett, who has played against Alabama, who understands what the task is, it's going to be a battle of two halves. It's going to be a battle of wills. It's going to be a battle of the X and O's. We'll see what happens, but I'm just looking forward to a great game on Saturday.
All right, guys, normally I wouldn't do this, right? This is PJ, by the way. Normally I wouldn't do this, but I got to step in. We just got a call. I really liked what he said and how he said it. That wanted just me to relay the message, not necessarily come on the air. But Brett calling in said, talking about Alabama and Georgia and whatnot, and teams being intimidated of Alabama and things like that. And he's like, he used the example. He said, have you ever seen Lion King? I was like, that's one of my favorite movies. But it came out the year I was born. And he said, the hyenas, when they say, ooh, Mufasa, oh, Mufasa. They always take a step back and go, oh, Mufasa. So they used to do that. Everyone used to do that. Alabama, oh, it's Alabama. They're scared. They're intimidated. He doesn't think Georgia's like that this year. He doesn't think when they hear Alabama, they start to shake and give them that respect and back up. They think they're the big dogs and ready to take it, not intimidated or scared anymore. And I got to say, I kind of agree with him.
I can believe that, but I always remember. But listen, I like that analogy. But I would say to Brent, remember they had to create a diversion to get rid of Mufasa. Ain't gonna be no diversion.
Are we getting into the dynamics?
No.
Of the Lion King?
I'm just saying. Nobody.
I mean, Brent didn't know he was getting that.
Listen, Brent, I do agree. Listen, there is no fear when you mention Alabama when you play at Georgia. There shouldn't be any fear, right? Because Georgia has proven. But I heard a great man once said, it's not how many fights you had, it's who you fought. So you've been the best every time you stepped in the ring. But underdogs can fall. I'm not saying they gonna fall, BJ, but just like I know, respect is earned every single Saturday. You got to earn this Saturday because, yes, Georgia, quote, doesn't need this game to go to the college football playoff, but they need this game for a confidence booster. Because if you lose to Alabama, think about what the storyline is going to be. They'll say, think about if Georgia loses to Alabama, goes on to win that championship. People are going to be talking about they still couldn't beat. So I think it's a lot on the line, BJ, but think about it. When Tampa Bay finally made it to the Super Bowl, they finally beat them Eagles. Right? It's always that team that just won't go away. The Braves to win the World Series, they finally beat them Dodgers. I'm not taking away the Astros and the Brewers. So sometimes you got to prove it to you. So we'll see what happens this Saturday. And Nick Saban never came out and said he can't be beat. He said, you got to beat me. So Kirby, he's going to be right on the other sideline. And BJ, it's going to be a great one. But BJ, just like I know, confidence in life is a huge factor in everything you do. If Georgia comes up short, they like, dude. Because most of the teams they beat, they were better than, right? Most teams didn't meet the talent threshold. Like I said, Jordan Davis might be the best storyline on the D-line. The best player in this game might be on the other side. He plays on the D-line or outside linebacker. The best quarterback in this game might be Bryce Young. The best quarterback for this game might be Stetson Bennett.
Keep in mind, Stetson Bennett has a better passer.
And Stetson Bennett
rating record,
has
yeah.
more experience because
Yeah.
played Alabama last year. But BJ, what if Alabama is at their best versus Georgia at their best? Georgia at their best versus Alabama at their best. That means offense and defense. Alabama might have a slight edge with their offense if they can find a way to move the football. We'll see. But that's why we watch the game. That's why we analyze the game. Brent, I think that's a great analogy. But Mufasa never wanted people to fear him. People just feared him. He never asked nobody to fear him, but it took every hyena they had and the help of his brother.
I'm pretty sure he did want people to fear. Like he wanted to rule by fear. Like
No. He
I feel pretty confident about that.
He didn't. No. He didn't. Everybody knows he was. Everybody knows he was the king of Prime Rock or wherever they were, and we getting all into the Lion King. But all I'm saying is, BJ, he respected everybody in the animal kingdom. Though he respected everybody. I remember him saying,
Wait, he respected every. Are you remembering the same Lion King?
Listen. Because listen. He says, Daddy. Simba said, Daddy, don't we eat the antelope? He says, yes, but son, when we die, our body becomes the grass. The antelope eats the grass.
I'm getting them confused. I'm thinking about what's the bad one's name?
Scar.
That's on me.
Oh, okay. So
the whole time I think we're talking about Scar, and I'm like, wait, what? No, okay, yeah, okay. That's a terrible mistake. That's a horrible mistake. No, Mustafa did not want to rule by fear.
Yes.
Okay, I got it.
Mufasa ruled by respect.
I think I have to watch Lion King tonight now to get on the same.
Mufasa ruled by respect.
I'm thinking about Scar the whole time, going, what is he talking about? Scar did want to rule by fear. Like,
Scar wanted to rule. He wanted to rule by intimidation. Didn't work. But listen, Alabama's not trying to intimidate. But BJ, once again, this is why they play the game.
See, this is what happens after 3 months of football season. You forget about the classics.
Great analogy, Brando. Great analogy, my brother.
Sincere apologies to Cam, Ben. That's a terrible, terrible misstep. I don't even know where to go from here. I confused me. And Scar. We'll come back. I do want to get into the psychology of this series, though. Good call. 912-342-7184 if you want to jump in here. We'll come back with more 3 and Out on the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Back here with you on 3 and Out. Yeah, tweet at us at Pigskin Radio. Man, terrible mistake. The Lion King last segment. Talking Georgia, Alabama, and the SEC championship game. And Ben, I wanted to talk about the psychology here because I do think Brent's call has a point where you think about in the past, maybe when you played Alabama, and I'm not saying that there's a lack of conviction amongst Alabama's opponents. I'm not saying that. I believe everybody takes the field, especially at that level, thinking they're going to win. But is there, when you play a team like Alabama, or Alabama has been, an air of we have to be perfect on the other side when you look across the line of scrimmage and there's Alabama? And I guess given the narratives, the relative narratives around the Crimson Tide this season, is any bit of that fear factor still there in your mind?
Yes, and no, BJ. Yes, because until you've done it, you want to prove you can do it, but no, because fear is something that you use to help prepare you forward, not necessarily because of the guy in front of you, but fear of not making a mistake like my assignment. But I will say this about mistakes, in this game. Georgia is used to making the other team create mistakes. And I'm talking about the Georgia defense, making the offense create mistakes or putting them in binds. What if Alabama does his best Georgia impression on defense, and they make this Georgia offense look very, 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 very mediocre? Because the one thing about Alabama, BJ, that you got to give them credit for, they've won every way because they've been in every situation. I've never seen a team get criticized more for winning than Alabama, because it's not, oh man, Alabama only won. They only won by 3. They only won by 10. Because going into the game, I said, look, y'all be letting these betting odds mess with y'all mind, as if to say the other team don't show up to play too. So if you're Georgia, you got to do what Kirby Smart said. Yes, pressure is a privilege, but he's talking about the pressure that you put on others. The pressure that you feel is different, because I will say I feel pressure every game I've ever played in, right? From 2 ways. One, I want to get my assignment done. I don't want to let my team down. But that team in front of me, they're good enough to bring out my worst assets or my work, So I do think, BJ, when you think about this game, it is a mind thing, right? Nick Saban has this confidence because all he's doing is padding his stat. I'm only adding to my legacy. I'm all ready to go. So really, every game I play can only take away from it if you think about it, because they waiting on me to lose. See, he ain't that good. He's won 7. Like, are we playing? Are we tripping? Think about how many people have become legends because of Nick Saban. Urban, Dabo, they became legendary because of who they beat, not just the fact that they won. So let's not do that. So you can take Urban Meyer, Jimbo, Dabo together, they still ain't got as many as Nick. So I think what happens is, BJ, Georgia has a lot on the line. One, you're trying to show that you can beat that team for Tuscaloosa. You're trying to show that you ain't just a regular season fluke, as far as which I don't even like to use the word fluke and Georgia together, but they ain't used to this. So, I mean, BJ, it's going to be great. I just think for Kirby, though, man, you talking about a legacy builder? It ain't too many guys that say they beat Alabama. Not beat them. You got Ole Miss when they had I can't even think of the young man's name. His uncle is the quarterback that played for Buffalo all those years.
Oh, Chad Kelly.
Chad Kelly. You talk about old Johnny Manziel, Johnny Football. But those guys had a great moment. One went on to win Heisman, other won it. Georgia is trying to beat Alabama to prove, hey man, we the best team. And this is something to say all year long. Not ebbs and flows. We beat everybody.
Yeah, it's amazing.
We'll see, BJ, but I just think that football is so humbling, because no matter what you do, that immovable object is lurking. They wanted Alabama to lose twice so bad. They wanted some kind of way for either Ole Miss to kind of come back, and because Georgia, because I will say this, I don't care what no Georgia fan says. No one looks forward to playing Alabama.
That's kind of what I'm getting at here. And it's not that Georgia isn't capable. That's an absurd notion.
Yes.
Georgia is the favorite. They've earned that. They are the number 1 team in the country. But I want to ask you something, because I've heard you say this specifically as it pertains to football, where you've said, A lot of people are confident. You got to be convinced. Are you confident that you're going to win the game? Yes. Are you convinced you're going to win the game? Do you think that every player, as you put it, on Georgia's team isn't just confident, but they're convinced that they're the better team on Saturday?
No. Because, BJ, you have no reason to be convinced because you've never done this before. See, everybody else you play, I beat this team before. I've seen this team before. What about, it's almost like this, BJ. It's like having a conversation and you're great at what you do, but you're trying to avoid that one mistake you had or that one. What about Alabama? Well, what about them? So, yes, they are confident. Man, I'm convinced, man, when the game is over, when that clock says 000 and we got more points than them, because I don't care who you are. Alabama has been here for a while. You ever see Alabama facilities? Alabama's updating their facilities not because they got new recruits, because they got to add another national championship wing. They got a wing for it. How many teams can say all these years? How many teams can say every recruiting class got a? I was watching I was watching Derek Henry on a podcast. They said, Derek Henry, man, how they paid you at Alabama? How they got you to come? He said they paid me in rings, and he stuck his hand up. All I'm saying, BJ, is this. When you Alabama, you chasing a different legacy than Georgia. You saying, man, we don't want to be the recruiting class that didn't get it done. Georgia's trying to be the first team to get it done since 1980. So you're going up against two different legacies. And I will say this, if Georgia gets over the hump and they beat Alabama, they can go, whew. But what's scary is Alabama beats Georgia. You might have to see them again. That's the thing.
I think
right?
what's also interesting about the SEC championship game, though, because I agree with you 100%. If Georgia beats Alabama, there will be this exhale. There will be this, we can finally, kind of just walk without thinking about dealing with answering questions about that. Okay, we can walk forward to the playoff. But here's what's interesting, or move forward to the playoff. If you beat Alabama, and that's this historic, maybe a changing of the guard type win, that's going to feel like a national championship. But you still got to turn around and get right for not one more game, 2 more games.
Yeah.
So I think regardless of what happens, it's going to be a test for Georgia psychologically. If you beat Alabama, can you still maintain that edge in your next game and then hopefully your next game after that? And if you lose to Alabama, what's your mindset going to be if you run into them again in the playoff?
Alabama, hopefully Georgia understands that Alabama is doing them the greatest favor ever because Alabama is preparing you for what's coming, not just who's in front of you right now. Every team in this playoff is Alabama because there is nothing else. See, the greatest thing about football is when that's it. Like, I had a coach tell me, look, man, look at football for one game is you're right. You're walking a tightrope. There is no net under you. That's all you got. You got to make it to the other side. So Alabama's hopefully preparing Georgia for what it's like to be the top dog, like to be at the top of the mountain. Alabama is always the hunted, and they hunters. Georgia is usually the hunter. They ain't been hunted before. I don't care what Georgia say. So I think, BJ, for Nick Saban, he's saying, look, man, if they beat us, they beat us. They're a great team. They got some great players. Georgia has been incredible this year. But in the back of his mind, he goes, one of my favorite movies is Biker Boys, man. And on the movie, Lawrence Fishburne, he's the top dog. He's the top dog, right? He's the top dog. And dude comes up to him and says, I don't think you got what it takes to be the king of Cali anymore. They called him the king of Cali. But he said, I don't think you got what it takes to be the king of Cali anymore. Lawrence Fishburne looks away and looks at him and said, you better look again. See, Nick Saban, people think Nick Saban ain't got no more. Based off of what? Because he lost the game? Nick Saban, he ain't saying this to Kirby. He's saying to everybody who think ain't got no more, boy, you better look again.
Do you think he likes this, being a touchdown underdog?
Yes, BJ, because at the end of the day, he knows that his team earned that, right? If Georgia goes undefeated, Nick Saban going to go, welcome to the club. We did this last year, right? So I just think that, BJ, this is what makes football what it is. It's like you can't escape. You can't escape it. You got to love it. And Nick Saban, he right now he's telling you how nobody wants to win the game more than the players, and I believe it. You got Coach Bob Stoops saying the program is the players, which it is. But old Kirby, if Kirby doesn't win, BJ, they're gonna be saying nobody said, man, it's always that one, right? Like, yeah, it's always that one. But to get to elite status, You got to beat the elite. Georgia has had an elite season. Alabama's elite. Georgia has 5 stars. Alabama has 5-star culture. There is a difference. Even if Georgia beats Alabama, I don't know if the changing of the guards is that, BJ, because Dabo did it, because we were talking about Dabo being the next, right? But Dabo also had Trevor. Dabo also had Deshaun. He also had Travis Etienne, that defensive line. Georgia got them horses on defense, that defensive line. But BJ, if we look up and it's 21-10 going into the fourth, Alabama up 11, you're going to be like, we shouldn't be surprised, but it should be a good game either way.
Still got to wait a couple of days, but everybody's fired up, ready to go. It's going to be a good one on Saturday, Georgia and Alabama. We'll come back. It's 3 and Out on the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. We'd love to see you tomorrow afternoon. Second Down with Christian Gokel and company, and 3 and Out. We will be broadcasting live at Coach's Corner in Savannah from 2 to 6. We'll be there, so make plans to stop by, say hello. Ben, we may even have a couple of copies of the book with us potentially. And bentroop84.com to get copies of Uncommon Unfinished. But come by. We might have some copies. We'd love to talk some sports with you. Get your prediction. Do not give your pick yet. Do not. But have you already made your pick? Don't say it. But for the SEC championship game, have you already made your pick?
No, BJ, because this is why it's good to like start the week off. You know, you wake up, it's going to be this. And then you start breaking down the analytics and you start breaking down the mind game. You start breaking down the individual matchups. Who has the edge at each position? Who's better on third down? Who's better, in the red zone? Who's better at the halftime? Who's better on special teams? It's so many factors within the game. But this is the one time you can't have a wrong choice because both of these teams are obviously very, very deserving. BJ, I'm just saying, this confidence walking around with your chest out saying that Georgia's just going to dominate Alabama, I'm not saying it can't happen, but you talk about I got to see it to believe it. Because Alabama has scratched and clawed to get back to this point with a bunch of young players, with their youngest player being their most important player, that being Bryce Young. BJ, I'm just saying, it is just Wednesday, just hump day. But I'm gonna keep that pick. I'm gonna reserve that pick till Friday. When Atlanta is probably already filled up with people right now. They're already barking at each other all down Peachtree. But hey, man, Georgia has earned this right to be in this spot. BJ, we'll see what happens. But going up against the Tide, that's not a winning recipe.
Hope to see you tomorrow at Coach's Corner in Savannah. Again, we'll have interviews with Brian Bohannon, head coach at Kennesaw State. The Owls,
who,
as they get ready to take on East Tennessee State. It's going to happen, people, all week. And then we'll also chat with Gary Goff, head coach at Valdosta State, as they get ready to take on Bowie State, I believe, for a spot in the Division II semifinals. So a couple of in-state teams, the college level, in addition to Georgia, making runs in the playoffs at a national championship. So we'll see you tomorrow at Coach's Corner. For Cam Ursery, Ben Troop, I'm BJ Bennett. Another edition of 3 and Out in the books. We are all across the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. We are streaming live, ESPNcoastal.com. You can also find us on the ESPN radio app.